Hi everyone, this is Mian He. Today I'm gonna discuss the case competition in 11.2, which is the undue influence. So let's get started. Let's talk about the basic introduction of the case competition 11.2. So the Harold and the Pearl own a 159-acre farm. The parties called a home place in South Dakota. During their marriage, the Harold handled all of the legal and financial affairs of the farm and the family. However, in 1980, the Harold died, leaving Pearl as the sole owner of the home place and another farm property. Since Pearl had no experience in handling the legal and financial affairs of the farm, so she fully entrusted her younger son, Lincoln, to take care of the daily operation. But uh, and in the year of the 1984, the farmland home place was evaluated at the value was appraised at the value of the $117,000. And in the 2008, there's no dispute that the fair market value of the home place was jumped to $697,000. However, the Lincoln somehow managed to sign a lease with Pearl to purchase the land in 2008 at a value for which it had appraised 24 years earlier, which is less than one-sixth of its current market value. And plus, the Lincoln historically paid Pearl significantly less than fair market value of the rent. And let's talk about the undue influence definition. The definition of the undue influence is someone taking unfair advantage of the person by reason of the dominant position based on a confidential relationship. The react is such conduct will render a contract voidable. Next slide is the five elements of undue influence. So after the Pearl signed a contract with Lincoln in 2008, the Lincoln told her not to tell this contract to her other six children, but in January 2009, the Pearl's children returned to the place where she lived for a funeral. For the first time, Pearl revealed the contract to the rest of her children, and they explained the contract to her. She began to cry and wanted the contract torn up. So the Pearl brought an action for rescission of the contract based on the ground of undue influence. The South Dakota trial court found that Lincoln had exercised undue influence and rescinded the contract. The Lincoln appealed, claiming the trial court made a mistake. So the Supreme Court of the South Dakota took over this case, and they have to review whether Lincoln's conduct the constitute or satisfy the five elements of the undue influence. The five elements include a person susceptible to undue influence, another's opportunity to exercise undue influence on that person to effect a wrongful purpose, another's disposition to do so for an improper purpose, a result clearly showing the results of undue influence. And the last one is the party alleging undue influence must prove these elements by a preponderance of the evidence. So let's talk about the first one, susceptibility to undue influence. So in this case, as we all know, Pearl had an 8th grade education and she lacked experience in business and legal transaction. So when she signed a contract for deed, the Pearl was almost 84 years old and hard of hearing. The Pearl and Dennis testified she had relied on her deceased husband to take care of all their business and legal matters during their marriage, so she herself didn't have any knowledge in handling such of operations. And last, the Lincoln admitted that Pearl had some mental impairment. And the next one is the opportunity to exercise undue influence. As Lincoln and Pearl had been living together for almost 8 years, up until the 1989. So Lincoln is someone Pearl trusted to do right, and Pearl had confidence that Lincoln would treat her fairly in the business. And next step talks about the disposition to exercise undue influence. The Lincoln had substantial experiments in farmland transaction and real estate appreciation. And second, the Lincoln knew how to appraise the farmland value fairly, as she used to do this in 1984. The result is correct. And third, the Lincoln took no steps to ensure that his elder mother understood the contract terms. As Lincoln knew, as Lincoln knew, his mother is 84 years old and had no knowledge at all in understanding the contract terms than anybody else. But he still chose to not to tell his mother or elaborate the concepts or the contents of the contract. And lastly, neither Lincoln nor his attorney advised Pearl to seek legal representation to make sure she has a general idea of what's going on. And the next test talks about the result showing the effects of undue influence. So by executing the contract for deed, the Pearl sold her property for $580,000 less than its value. And besides this, the 30-year payment deemed too long, as Pearl is already 84 years old. So in order for her to fully receive the payment of the mortgage, she has to live up until the 114 years old, which is nearly impossible. So since the Lincoln's contract satisfy all 5 elements of the undue exercise, so the Supreme Court of the South Dakota affirmed the judgment of the circuit court. Thank you.